If you just say, well, what percentage of Trump voters is the kind of ultra nationalist go back to Iran group? My guess, I don't want to overstate it, but it's probably a third of the Trump electorate that's overtly part of that. And maybe there's another third that kind of dabbles in it.
In this video, David Pakman attempts to stir up drama with Patrick Bet David. David Pakman plays a clip that he says shows Patrick Bet David realizing that most Trump supporters are racist. With that, let's watch David Pakman try to make up a story about Patrick Bet David that doesn't exist.
Hey, this is super funny. Patrick Bet David, the host of the PBD podcast, where I have appeared before, he had this little clip where he sort of learns that a lot of Trump's base doesn't like people like him and like me because we came here from another country. He explains, oh, I was getting feedback that was like, go back to Iran, even though I'm a Trump guy. I'm checking all the right boxes, but they still don't like me. Yes, this is a significant portion of the MAGA base. Listen, this is so funny. It's like he's learning in real time the people that he's chosen to associate himself with.
Look at the tweets. I said, our founding fathers. A guy responds back and says, those are not your founding fathers. Guy posts a picture of the Shah of Iran, says, that's your founding father.
So funny.
But that tells you what, you know, a part of this, there's nationalists
Yes.
and there's white nationalists. White nationalists, Vinny, don't want people like us here.
I know.
They just don't. White nationalists are a very different model. You view me as go back to Iran.
Yes.
Deport Elon back to, what do you call it, South
Africa.
Africa. Deport Vivek back to India,
His
right?
parents.
And
He was born here.
you make those types of comments. All
Yeah, even though Vivek was born here. Very good point.
right. I don't think that's majority of America. I think that's less than 5%
No, that is the far
of
right.
America. Yeah, that's the far right.
Ultra-nationalists.
And that's the far right. And the far left wants
If you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
open borders.
See, this is a classic thing. When they have no way to deny that there is this horrible, xenophobic, unsavory contingent in their movement, rather than just dealing with that, he goes, and on the far left, they want open borders. What does that have to do with anything? Whether it's true doesn't even matter. That's not the issue. That's not really what we're talking about here.
And let everybody come in here. Let's legalize everyone. The far right wants, if you're not a white nationalist, get the hell out of here. The problem here is you as a consumer not knowing the position of the individual before they say it, and you think everyone is in that position. They're not. Not everyone's in that position.
Yeah. They also want me to go back to Argentina, right? I mean, it's like, this is not a new thing. It's shocking to me that he's acting as though it's news to him that this exists on his side, and it's not 5%. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's everybody. I mean, it's not PBD, right? We can say a lot of things that we would disagree about, and when I was on his show, we disagreed about tax policy. We disagreed about so many different things. But one of the things that is absolutely the case is that PBD is not in this, I should go back to Argentina.
David and his progressive buddies are really running out of things to talk about. I think most Americans feel like, well, first of all, Trump hasn't been in there that long, but since he has, things are going pretty good. It's hard to make a case for your quote unquote progressive changes when things are going well. And then when PBD makes the distinction between the far left and the far right and kind of compares them, David says, well, that's not the issue. That's not what we're talking about here. What do you mean? It has nothing to do with what you want him to talk about, which is how racist the Republican Party is. But that was never his point anyway. So your whole stupid segment now makes no sense. I mean, like most of your segments. And let me ask you guys a question. Would you ever know that David and his family immigrated here from Argentina if he didn't bring it up all the time? Because to me, he just looks like a white dork. So anyone who's ever said to him, go back to your country or go back to Argentina, I guarantee it's been online trolls. And I'm not saying I condone that kind of behavior, but No one on the planet looks at him and says, I don't like him because he's a minority. They might say, I don't like him because he's a white guy, because that's what he looks like. But no one's saying to him, go back to your country in person. Online trolls for sure, but he signed up for that when he puts himself out there. And again, I don't condone it. I'd never go up to a legal immigrant and say, go back to your country. And I don't think the majority of the Republican Party would. So this is a guy who spends 24 hours a day ripping on Trump and his voters. So it's to be expected that he's going to have nasty things said to him. And that's not a good thing, but it's the reality of the internet. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Tina thing, because it'd be kind of hypocritical if it were the case, then maybe he should go back to Iran, right? He's not part of that. But pretending that that's only 5%. I mean, listen, if it's 5% of America, it's 17 million people. But that's if you consider the entire population, including kids, including people who don't even know to have positions on this. If you just say, well, what percentage of Trump voters is the kind of ultra-nationalist go back to Iran group? My guess, I don't want to overstate it, but it's probably a third of the Trump electorate that's overtly part of that. And maybe there's another third that kind of dabbles in it. They probably wouldn't say it, but to a degree they think it. That's what it is. You know, we shouldn't overstate it and we shouldn't understate it. But 5% of America, yeah, I don't think so. So just kind of funny to see him realize, man, I'm part of a movement that would kick me out of the movement. Now, zooming out for a second, the purity test stuff, I believe it's a bigger.
I think some good context here is that when David went on the PBD podcast, even though he looks like a jackass in every interview that he does, he was exposed on that one for how slimy he is and never answers questions directly. And he kept saying, where's the data or what's the source? He wouldn't just have a conversation like a human being. So I think he holds a grudge against PBD, and it manifests in dumb little segments like this. I love how David says, now, I don't think that PBD would say I have to go back to Argentina. He's not one of those guys. Well, I'm really glad you clarified that, David. What a great analysis, because I think we were all worried that someone who's from Iran thinks you should go back to Argentina. Like, what was the point of even saying that? Is anyone thinking that, even his dumb viewers? It's like he's just throwing in filler for the heck of it. I love how David says, now, I don't want to overstate how many Trump voters are racist and xenophobic, but I'd say that it's like a third that are overtly racist and xenophobic. You don't want to overstate it. A third of Trump voters would be 25 to 26 million people. And then you said another third dabble in it. So essentially you're saying over 50 million people in the country are racist and xenophobic. When Patrick Bet David said, I think that's 5% of the country, personally, I think it's less than 1% of the country. And I'd love for you guys to let me know in the comments, have you ever met a white nationalist or someone from the KKK or one of these hate groups on the far right? I've never met one. I'm not saying they're not out there. I've never met one, or at least I've never met one that I'm aware of. I mean, if it was as prevalent as David's talking about, even if it was 5% of the country, the news would be covering these people because they want to paint Trump voters as that. You know what I mean? Like you'd see constant coverage of people like that. So it's really, really funny that he says, I don't want to overstate it. Then essentially says it's 50 million people in the United States. He's an idiot. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Bigger problem on the left. I've said before, one of the reasons the right does win, and there's many reasons, right? I mean, at the congressional level, you've got gerrymandering, and there's no one explanation. But one of the things that hurts the left are the purity tests. The left seems to be sort of like motivated to some degree by who can we exclude from the movement because they don't check the right boxes. Of course, there's intolerance on the right, but it's more about, listen, they'll accept Jewish people. They'll accept gay people. They'll sometimes accept trans people. They'll accept some Muslim people. They'll be skeptical. They won't love it, but they'll accept it as long as you mostly accept their views. because they know that it just helps them win. The left is still hesitant on that, and the purity tests do plague the left.
David said there's lots of reasons that Republicans win. At the congressional level, gerrymandering, there's lots of reasons. Then he proceeds not to name anything else. So the reasons Republicans win is gerrymandering. Great argument, David. How desperate is this guy getting? The reason the Republicans are winning is because your party screwed up the country so bad in the last 4 years that we have to clean up everything you've torn down or screwed up. Finally, I'll wrap up with this. I love how he says the right wing wants to send everyone back to their country. Then he lists off a bunch of races, sexualities, whatever, that the right is welcoming and accepting towards. So am I crazy, or didn't he just defeat his entire case at the end there and point out how the left has a stupid purity test, which they do? We all know that you have to agree with 100% of their lunacy or they'll cast you out into the wasteland and chastise you. But we want to hear from you. What do you all think about David Pakman's non-story suggesting that Patrick Bet David just realized that most of the Republican Party is racist? Let us know. Anyway, as always, really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.